this session is Real World Ready. We're going to be talking a little bit about work skills and work ready skills today, but also talking more specifically about Essential Education Solution, which is called Work Essentials. And so we'll be trying to go big picture and kind of zoom into what we kind of do when it comes to work ready skills, and then we'll kind of zoom back out and talk about some implementation strategies that really anyone can use for regardless of what software curriculum that you have. So that's the plan for today. Just waiting to see if anyone else shows up in person or virtually before we jump in. Do you all have any specific questions, those of you two here in the room or anyone online, any specific questions that you want answered? Or it could be general, it could be specific, just so I can try to make sure I weave it in. Or nothing yet?
I'm just looking to see, my one class is a environment absolutely anyway, I teach advanced English language.
Okay.
And in something that
Yeah. Gotcha. Awesome. Okay.
I want to see kind of how this will fit into
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, one attendee's looking for their advanced ESL students and some work ready components and topics, thinking about that. Good stuff. All right, well, we're just going to dive in. Well, thank you all for joining. My name is Charlie Weeks, and I've been with Essential Ed for about 5 years now. Live in Oklahoma and used to teach and manage and work for the state of Oklahoma, local programs, state stuff for the first 10 or 15 years of my career, and got connected with Essential Ed in 2021, and I've been working with them these past 5 years in a kind of customer service, training, PD, implementation type of role, mainly kind of post-sale, like how can we work with customers to make what we have fit for their context. That's a lot of kind of what I do, and it's looked a little different, but yeah, do a lot of sessions virtually for us, and then obviously in person. But yeah, Work Essentials is probably, I was going to say, it's probably my favorite thing that we have, just in terms of its kind of flexibility, and I think the way you can kind of be weaved in a lot of different capacities. So we're going to dive in and talk a little bit about that. For those that are online, if you have any questions, I can see my phone here. I am looking at the chat, so feel free to communicate there, and I can see your questions and try to respond to those or verbalize those to the group here, and we can, incorporate you all as well. So the plan today, just to get on the same page, is what is work ready? Talk a little bit about what that means, and maybe you all's context and what you think that means. Talk a little bit about that from my point of view, and then we'll talk specifically, how does Essential Ed address kind of those gaps and challenges, and then we'll specifically dive into, like I said, work essentials. You guys can see that on the screen here, and then we'll kind of zoom back out of saying, okay, regardless of what you use, I mean, if we can use the essential education approach, but what are some ways that you can start to implement and think about some of these topics, right? Regardless of what kind of class you're in, how can we start to kind of fuse some of this in? Ideally, it'd be in kind of a structured curriculum and thinking through that. But even if it's not, what could that look like? So, and then we'll wrap up today. So that's my plan. So turn it over to you all. When you hear work ready, what does that mean? Should have got your name so I could really just. Any thoughts? Off the top of your head? Does it mean? Okay. So when you think about your students being ready, what if I said, hey, I'm about to hire a few of your students and I need to make sure they're ready to go? What would you hope they would have? So, I mean, in this hypothetical fake employment scenario that you don't even really know what it's going to be for, what are some of the big things that employers look for, or that you're trying to assist your students to kind of be ready for? Yeah. Soft skills is kind of the big one, right? Yeah. So that's probably listening, communicating, collaborating, long suffering, time management. Yeah, it's a big one. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a lot of those things. No one's in the chat saying anything. Yeah, and I would agree. So it could be, as you said, it could be soft skills. You can see some of the other ones we have on the screen. Maybe a little bit of digital literacy. Maybe that's in different contexts. Maybe makes sense, but obviously a lot of jobs could be communicating on a computer through some sort of device. It could be accessing schedules, or obviously just doing the actual work on some sort of digital device. We talked a little bit about some of the soft skills, which we'll go into in more detail. Problem solving is a big one. I mean, is that a soft skill, hard skill? Who knows? But probably a little bit of both. Just thinking through, and depending on the job and the work context. I mean, problem solving could probably be one of the biggest things that our students need to be able to do with, hey, life, work, this scenario doesn't look the same every single time, and I've got to think about it and approach it from a different point of view each time. And how do I do that? Personal finance, is that work ready? Is that do you think our students need to have some personal finance skills to be ready to work? Or do you think that's not a part of this?
Definitely be helpful.
Helpful, yeah, it's definitely helpful. Yeah, to an extent, right? They have to kind of have a little bit of their own life in order to be able to kind of come in, and probably a little bit like the time management, like show up on time. I need to be able to have enough money to pay for my gas to get to work, or buy my uniform, or whatever might be the case. So yeah, probably a little bit. What about flexible learning? Being able to kind of learn different styles, different approaches. It's not on here, but I think with flexible learning, my initial thought right after that was like kind of self-advocacy. How do you, when someone's maybe training you, explaining something to you, and you don't understand it, right? How can you say, hey, is there a different way I can understand this? Or do you have a document on that? Or do you have a video that explains that, right? Whatever their style is when it comes to learning and understanding, and maybe even more than just the learning aspect, is how can you speak up for yourself, advocate, and just normalize that, right? Because so many people are afraid. Oh my gosh, I don't want them to understand. I don't know. I don't want them to understand. I need help with this aspect of HR or this. And it's like just learning how to kind of find your voice. I think specifically with understanding how to help yourself learn when it comes to all the new things that someone might be doing in work. So wide array. We're going to probably zero in specifically a little bit on the soft skills today. We do have a digital literacy piece and a personal finance piece, which are those first two there on the screen, our Computer Essentials course. I talked about that a little bit yesterday in a session, and Money Essentials, which again is our kind of nice little personal finance course that kind of introduces a lot of personal finance topics. But Work Essentials is what we're going to talk about today, about how we really lay that out. So we're going to look at that, and we'll actually dive into the program, maybe look at some lessons, and give you a good idea. So before we do that, again, in the chat or in real life here, what are you doing anything now? I don't know. Do you? So we have an ESL classroom teacher, advanced ESL. Are you an instructor? Director. Are your students? Are they doing anything? Not your students. Are your teachers? Is there a directive from you or the state or someone saying, "Hey, you need to be accomplishing this"? And is that done in all classes, or is that just like a specific orientation or class? Like, what does that look like? You don't want to ask. Yeah, just kind of infuse them.
Yeah.
Structure.
It's just a general.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we've got an ESL teacher that's thinking, how can I do this a little more? Thinking I want to add something a little more explicit. And another program director is saying that it's kind of done and infused, generally speaking, but wanting to think about it a little bit more, again, specifically and maybe structured and stuff like that. Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways to do it. That's what my experience, again, from the local program side as a teacher and manager, and then working for the state of Oklahoma, it was more of we didn't have this direct set as like, hey, you need to do this, but we didn't really give more specifics. So I think then the local director is like, hey, you need to do this, but the teacher's like, okay, I need to do this, but I've got 25 other things I need to try to accomplish. Right, the pre-testing, the post-testing, and the digital literacy, and what are my students' actual goals? They want to get these diplomas, and all the different things. So it's how do you juggle all that? It's kind of, I think, the big question. And it'd be nice to have a set class. So, hey, every Friday for 2 hours, you go to this one thing and you get it all at that one time, but that doesn't always happen. So yeah, thinking a little bit of how can you maybe sprinkle it in and do that well. So Work Essentials, it is a standalone course, standalone product. For those that just came in, I've got catalogs in the back if you're interested or need them. I know last session someone was like, "How much that cost?" I don't actually know. So if you're curious about what we have, you can get one of those catalogs in the back, and we have those at our booth. But so Work Essentials is a standalone work ready course. It's one of 3 courses we have. I mentioned the others with the Computer Essentials and Money Essentials, but when we redesigned it and kind of relaunched it probably about 4 years ago, we looked at the employability skills that were outlined by the NNBIA, and I'll give you $50 if you know what that acronym stands for. I always have to relook it up every time I do this presentation, but so it's the National Network of Business and Industry Associations. So probably a lot of local associations that are coming together to make this large national network. But they outlined specific skills, employability skills that they wanted to see and that their employers were looking for. And so we used that as an initial framework of the things and the topics we wanted to include. But so we have 3 main modules, and what we're trying to do is help students navigate the job search, so kind of that pre-employment phase. And then once they get a job or get employed, it's how do we help them become valuable employees, and then potentially how do you help them advance? So all of those things: job seeking, job keeping, job ready, all of those different aspects. And the great thing about Work Essentials and our Computer Essentials as well is we have badging and micro credentials infused throughout. So as students are working through units, there are badges that correspond to those units that they get. And it's in the simplest terms, it's a way to show visual progress, but in kind of a bigger reason and rationale is that there's a external website that we connect to, Credly, if you've heard of it. I know other organizations and companies can use them for their credentialing, and so we use that. And so students actually earn these little micro credentials that they can connect with and share and email to employers or schools or what have you to say, hey, here are things that I've actually done. And there's not some large industry that has put their stamp on it, but it's the way I like to describe it, and you'll see some visuals here in just a little bit. It's a great talking point and a place to start for students if they're in having some of those initial conversations of, oh, I was just in this program, or I took this class and I was learning about these things. Rather than just saying it, they could say, hey, well, look at this thing and let me tell you about what I learned while I was doing this. So I think it makes it a little bit more real, and they could obviously show that digitally or print it off if they wanted to. But so that's those certificates and badges are infused throughout the course, which you'll get to see here in just a second. The nuts and bolts of the course is, like I said, it's broken up into 3 main modules or sections. There's kind of the job seeking, which is the pre-employment. And you could probably think about what some of those topics include: job ready, and then job keeping. So there's 15 different units that are spread across all of those modules. So every unit has its own quiz. And inside of all those units, we have 78 lessons. And so if a student were to go and take every single lesson and go through the entire content, it's roughly, we say an average student, but it depends on the student. It might be more, might be less, but around 24 hours of content. So a nice amount of time, and all that stuff, is available that they can study. So the reason why I love Work Essentials is the flexibility aspect, because our students probably, I would assume, unless you've really surveyed and oriented and kind of grouped your students into a very specific class or group where it's like, oh, this is all my pre-employment students, or these are all people looking for jobs, or this is all, normally it's not like that, right? It's like you have a class and everyone might be broken up more about their ability level. Hey, these are my higher level ESL students, these are my lower level ABE students, whatever that may look like. And so what's great about Work Essentials is that any of those modules can be done at any time. So you don't have to necessarily go through from lesson 1 through lesson 78. You can just take that middle section and say, hey, we're just working on job ready. Or I have a lot of students that just need to think about job seeking, kind of those skills and aspects. So it can kind of be done like that. And that's one of the reasons why I like it. And then even beyond that, all the lessons are available to look at and do at any time. So it's very kind of open. Students can go sequentially through it, but also they have the ability to pick and choose, or the teacher can kind of direct them to pick and choose specific things that they want them to study. We have a statewide kind of implementation that they just have a specific list of units that they want the students to do. So it's not necessarily the list that we prescribe, but it's, hey, this is what our state, our people have kind of deemed and mandated what's necessary. So they just have this just digital classroom and kind of old school, just paper copy of here's the syllabus and here's what you need to do. So when you get into work essentials, and students then have the ability just to go and find those things and accomplish those and just show their completion through those badges and things like that. Any questions so far? I know I'm kind of talking a little quickly. I want to make sure I don't overlook any questions or thoughts or comments. I just had lunch, so I'm kind of maybe that's how you feel. No, I'm doing good. We're doing good here. So work essentials badging certificates, I mentioned that a little bit. So I mentioned Credly, that we have this integration with this external website. We have these digital badges that are displayed again in our system, but also on their site and can be promoted and shared social media, email, and then we also have certificates. So we kind of have these two different credentialing pieces in our system. The badges are again through the units, and then certificates are for those whole modules and then for the whole course. So depending on if you're looking for some sort of final, again, credential with what we have those. And again, we haven't gone out necessarily and asked specific states or industries or nationwide organizations to approve them, but if you're wanting documentation of completion, that's what these are. So let's do this. I'm going to stop my sharing for just a second. I'm going to actually log into our platform so you can actually see what this looks like. And we will do that right now. I should have been ready to go. I apologize here. Let's reshare. So essential education, generally speaking, is web-based. We have, if you're a customer, you would be able to log in and access your specific school, your specific URL for your students and for yourself. Students, teachers, administrators all have the same place that they would go to. In this example, in this demonstration school, this is where I'm at today. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so we can see this. But as long as you or your students can get on the internet, pull up a web browser, and that could be phone, tablet, desktop, laptop, whatever device you or they want to use, you can use essential education. So as long as there is a internet connection, that is possible. So I'm going to just log in right now as a school administrator, and let me know, somebody, if I need to zoom in on the screen a little bit so we can see things a little bit bigger. Do this. So web-based, we do have offline version of our software as well. Work Essentials, like I said, is just like any other course. And one of the great things about Work Essentials, if you do have students that are studying academically, as maybe has been mentioned, is that it's the same platform, right? They're not having to relearn where to go or where to navigate or how to do something or access a lesson. It's going to be pretty much an identical experience. It's just going to be work-ready content. And we'll kind of look at what that looks like. And so in terms of our kind of behind the scenes teacher educator point of view, just in terms of our platform here, we have these tabs that go across the top. That's kind of navigation of how to move around our system and do the things you want to do. For those that have seen or have used essential education, I always like to ask the question, this, or the little cursor at the top, this is go to student homeroom. Has anyone clicked on that before? Miss Lincoln? No. So what I love about this, I have a colleague in the back of the room. I mean, this is one of the things we talk about a lot when we're talking about we're doing virtual sessions, is this button. And so for today, I'm logged in as a teacher, but we're going to look at a little bit of the student experience because that's probably what a lot of people actually want to see. And I can click this as a teacher to mimic, to display, to do an orientation, to preview, or just to kind of understand a little bit more specifically about the student experience in essential education. So what you're seeing now, hopefully you kind of see how the theme changed, the color changed, and you're seeing kind of the black and a little bit of the orange here. So this is the student view. When students log in, they're generally going to see something that looks like this. Now you can see all of these blue course options that your students are not going to have access to every single course we have. But because this is our demonstration school, we just kind of have them all turned on. So if you had GED Academy and Tape 13, 14 Academy, and you wanted a student to be studying in both, that might be all they would see. So it just depends on your selection and what you give to a student would be what they could see here. So this list might be really small depending on how much access you give your students. But in that same kind of vein, our work ready courses would be there. Work Essentials is one of those. So when I click on Work Essentials here, it allows me, and I'm just going to reset my progress just so you can see what it looks like from the very beginning. If I click into that, let's see what happens here. Maybe not. Yep, so maybe I'm where I need to be. So click on your course, and all of our courses, when the student starts, there's going to be an initial video overview. Hey, welcome to Essential Ed. Here's what this is. Here's what to expect. Here's what we need you to do. And the other aspect about our system and our products is that all of our courses start with a diagnostic, because we need to know what a student knows and doesn't know. And with work and soft skills, that's a little harder because it's more of just kind of a survey. Hey, have you had experience doing this? Do you feel like you understand how to do this? It's a little bit of that. And so students can, as you see the blue button there in the middle of the screen, they can take a survey. Where our system's going to try to understand more about their background and then remove that type of content. So we give them a little bit more of a curated and prescriptive list. Or, as I was saying, students can just click this choose a lesson or click this all lessons here just to see the entire scope. Okay, here's our first unit in this job ready module is on goal-oriented thinking. Maybe that's something you want to look at. So introduction to goals, goals for areas of life, goals for results, how to define a goal, achieving a goal, staying on track. So those are all the lessons. And then as a student takes this unit quiz, goal-oriented thinking, there is a badge that right here in the middle says goal-oriented thinking. And if they pass the quiz, they would illuminate. And then there's a little link where they could go and claim that badge on Credly, as I was mentioning. So they would be able to kind of slowly see these badges illuminate as they make progress. They could claim those badges if they want, but each one of these corresponds to one of our units. So this next one says workplace communication, and what do you see on our next unit in this module is called workplace communication, professionalism, initiative, dependability, customer focus. So those are all of the units for this job ready module, job seeking. You could imagine potentially, if I were to survey you all, you could probably guess what some of these topics would be: finding a job, applying for a job, making a good first impression, technology for a job search. Those are the units for that module. And then oh, yes. Yeah, we see you were late. You didn't even say that earlier, but it's good to reiterate. I was saying that's probably one of the reasons why Work Essentials is one of my favorite courses, is that you can make it work for you in terms of what you chop up or you access, or you ask your students to access, is they can do any of it at any time. So if you want them to go straight to job keeping, or you want some to do job keeping and some to do job seeking, and even inside of that, as AJ is saying, asking about do they have to do everything, or can they just go into different pieces, is yeah, you can just go, and these blue links here are the links to the lessons, so they can access any of that at any time. So for some students, that might be too much freedom. I'm thinking of some younger students who might just be all over the place, and I'm gonna look at this and I'm gonna do something completely different the next day, and I'm gonna look at this completely thing, and there's not really a rhyme or reason. And that is possible. But if you think about kind of being student directed and allowing adults to direct their own learning, it's like that's what's here. So it could be, based on their goals. It could be based on, again, like we already kind of talked about, statewide kind of mandates, local mandates, and where you could yourself as an instructor say, hey, I just want my students doing these 10 concepts, these 10 lessons. I just want them doing these 2 units and actually taking the unit quizzes. Like, so you could do the quizzes, you don't have to do the quizzes, but it allows programs, it allows individual educators, and it allows students to kind of decide that based on their goals. And so that's, again, why I like this. maybe more than other things that either we have or that I've seen in the market is just that ability to kind of adapt and depending on what they need. And I mentioned, oh yeah, you go ahead. It's a good question. I don't believe we have any topics on AI in the content right now. The question was asking about that's what you asked me. Is there lessons on AI? Hmm. With those, yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question. Right now we don't. We updated this in 2022. Yeah, so I think the nuts and bolts, the bulk of what we have is still thinking about the soft skills is still very much in line. But yeah, that's something that we're probably thinking. We had an audience member asking about again just AI content and using AI for job search and those things, and if that was in the content. So
course in the
Yeah. So who do you fit? And I'm just curious if there was something you have to because that kind of my biggest feedback is like,
Mm.
give a person, this doesn't feel updated.
yeah,
I mean, we're still interviewing.
yeah, of course.
That, but even within, I mean, that now we have AI job and say, help me, help me apply for a job at wherever, and it gives you such detail. And so, we love Essential Ed for TV, for our workplace program, which is
Yeah.
help out.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so just recapping for the handful of people that are here virtually was just continued discussion about AI content, if and when it's going to be put into the system. And one of my colleagues in the back of the room was talking about how it's being added in the short to medium term into our computer essentials content. And then from there, we'll probably look at how do we slowly evolve that or morph that to be able to be in here. But the moment I don't have a timeline. I mean, maybe up at our booth we could, but I know it's something that the higher ups and the instructional design team are considering how do we best put that in there. But yeah, I love the question. I appreciate it. I agree. It's needed. But yeah, so again, here it is. And so the lessons, if you're not familiar with our content, again, what students would see when they log in, they can see something like this, and then they can be self-directed. You have the ability. I'm going to annotate on the screen here just to see that I can do this. So you have the recommended lessons based on the survey. So it would curate, hey, this is your next lesson. This is your next lesson based on how that survey they did and what they need to do. Or they can access the content via this all lessons. And that could be something where, again, if you are the teacher, if you are program director, it could be topical. It could be, hey, in the news, they're talking a lot about networking. I don't know, let's just say, the president had a networking event, or this happened, and you want to bring that into your classroom. You could talk about it, and you could say, hey, everybody, when you log in, I want you to go and find this networking lesson, and they could go there and they could go and do it. So it could be very topical, current events. It could be, like I said, you could go and you could examine this list of content and cherry pick out the 10 or 15 or 20 things that you think are most important based on your experience. You collaborate with other fellow educators in your program saying, let's all get together and what do we want our students to do? They can't spend 24 hours on this specific content, but we know it's important. So what are the things we want them to have access to maybe as they're getting into class and we're waiting for everybody so we can start, or close to the end when we have 15, 20, 30 minutes hypothetically to have them work on some stuff. Maybe they could jump into this as they're doing those things, or maybe once a week on Friday mornings, like we want to have them to spend a little bit of time. And you could have your, again, it could be a communicated list via email, via text, via, Blackboard or some sort of classroom space digitally, or it could be just, a syllabus that you slide across the table. Say, hey, when you have time, I want you to work through these topics. So that's all possible. All of our content as well. You can assign content as an instructor, and so if you wanted to make a syllabus or a list of teacher-directed content in essential education, you could do that from your side, and then they would see this third tab pop up, and it would say assignments, and then that list that I was kind of articulating that same idea, it would be in essential ed, and they would just see that in the order of the sequence that it appears. So if you had those 10 things, you could go in and give students those 10 things. You could even leave notes. Hey, John, I want you to do this on Monday, April 23rd, and then hey, next on Monday, May 1st, I want you to do this, and you could leave these notes so students could have that direction of what they need to go and do. So that's all available. And who has seen one of our lessons before, even academic or work essentials? We got someone in the back we have a few people that have seen those. So, I mean, I'm happy to click into a lesson if you feel like that'd be helpful. I mean, it's a very similar structure. If we wanted to look, I'm just going to click on this networking window here. So our same lesson structure, the same kind of pop-up window that we use, the introduction, some of our same voice actors, Leonard here, are going to be there. So again, that familiarity of, hey, I've been studying academic content, I've been doing DVD Academy, I've been doing TABE Academy. And if you were to add this on, or you wanted students to spend some time in Work Essentials, you're not going to have to reorient them. You're not going to have to, don't have another login. They don't have to find, out where to go and what to do. It's all here. The navigation inside the lesson is all the same with if there are resources for the lesson, the transcript to what is being said, if there's closed captions, and even the menu of what's available is there as well. So students have all the same capabilities and functions. Some of the lessons that we have will start. We'll have Leonard again introduce it and go from there. And then sometimes we have videos that are infused into the lessons. We hear skills to pay the bills, talking about networking. So they're going to go through with this scenario, and then the student is going to be able to react to that scenario on, again, maybe what the person did right, what they did wrong, what they can do, and the general concept. I've turned the volume down here just so I can talk over the top of it, but. So yeah, and then the students would have the ability to do some practice questions. So it's very straightforward. I was telling the audience yesterday in the other session I did regarding our computer essentials that, again, what I like about this, and for some students, it might be your higher level ESL students, Work Essentials is a great introduction to a lot of these topics. Is a student going to be able to leave having done Work Essentials and go and do a master's degree on that topic? No, but I think sometimes our students just need that introduction, that idea of, okay, I need to understand more about this. And then as they get into it more, understand it more, inquire about it more, then they can maybe be directed to, if need be, something more specific. But we have this content available. Again, I think for many students, the introduction to some of these concepts, if they haven't thought about it, can be really, really, really helpful as a way to get a little bit of background knowledge, a little bit of understanding, kind of connect those dots, and then understand how to bring that into either their workplace or into the classroom and talk about it and ask about it. But yeah, what else? From the student point of view of essential education with this, any other thoughts or questions? I mentioned a little bit about the certificates and those things, and we won't necessarily go and look at all of that, but I'm just going to kind of scroll down here on this homeroom. If they have assessment scores, you could be able to see those here on the right. You can see the badge. Again, if they are to get this entire module, that would illuminate and be available. We track their study time. Students have the ability to see how much time they're putting in, and they actually have a goal. So kind of compare the goal that they wanted versus the time they're putting in, which I really like. And then their certificates are down here at the bottom. So as they start to acquire certificates, they can see those, and a few other resources at the bottom. But any other questions about the student point of view or experience? AJ, from your perspective, anything else you feel like would be helpful for them to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I like about the badges is when it connects to Credly. Of course, you don't have to use the Credly connection, but when it does connect to Credly, it gives you language or skill that you just earned. And so I found whenever I was teaching my students, very seldom did they have the vocabulary to describe what they were good at. You can sit down to work on resumes and cover letters, job interviews, do mock interviews, and they just struggled to say, I'm good at these things. And so what I like about the Credly badges is it gives just a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of what that skill was. And of course, they wouldn't copy and paste that and put it in, but it gives them words
Yeah,
to use in their cover letter and as their answers to interviews. So I thought just that access to vocabulary was really helpful.
yeah, that's good. I tried to say that 20 minutes ago, but I think you said it
Oh,
a
yeah,
lot better.
Sorry to interrupt, does it show the vocabulary when they write with the badge, or do they hover over it like I see you're doing? So they just hover over it and
So they hover over it when a student actually acquires the badge or passes that unit. This would, the badge would illuminate and there would actually be a link saying claim your badge, and then it goes to our partner website, Credly. Again, they do a lot of credentialing, and then they'd be able to claim it. So it would say what the badge is, it would say who issued it, and then like AJ saying, there'd be a blurb about what that was, that badge is, kind of some of the skills to AJ's point about what that is. So I mean, yeah.
That's what that is, like when you go to Credly, right? So for this particular skill, just since you all can't come hover, this was understanding the internet. And the description is earners are able to understand web navigation, basic internet knowledge, and internet connections. So all the skills have little blurbs like that, which again, it just gives them something.
Just a little bit, yeah, and that's what I was saying is like it gives them that structure if they're talking to a future employer, potential employer, or really anyone and they're wanting to try to showcase their skills. Yeah, exactly. It gives them a little bit of that backbone, that structure to do that. Yeah, it's great. Just conversation about badging and how to use that and students using that to their advantage, but. So I'm going to click on this return to LMS button, this orange button here. For those that right when we first started and we logged in, I was talking about how I'm logged in as an instructor, as an educator, and we wanted to experience and preview the student point of view, and we did that. And now I'm ready to kind of go back and let's talk a little bit about, well, what does a teacher do? Do they want to maybe assign things? Do they want to preview content, understand what's in the system, what's in Work Essentials, or some of the things they can do? And so if I click this return to LMS, it should take me back to the educator side of things. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here just so we can see these buttons a little bit bigger. And so one of the things that a lot of educators ask us is, hey, you know, many of our customers use Essential Education supplementally outside of class. So it's, hey, I'm a teacher, you know, I've been doing this for 15 years. I have the things I do with my students, but we have access to this great tool. So yeah, John Doe, go ahead and use it as much as you want outside of class. Which is not a bad approach, but then there are customers and teachers who say, well, how do I use it if I wanted to do something in class with my students? How can I do that? Are there lesson plans? Are there things we can do? And so that idea of bringing it into the classroom, we talk, normally one of the places we'll go and we'll talk about is this content map. So if you wanted to preview the content as a teacher, if you wanted to display the content and do some group exercises with your students, which again, Work Essentials, one of the things I love again about the content is I think all of our adult students, I would assume, have had some sort of job or had made some sort of money in their life, right? In some way, shape, or form. So they all have stories. They've all tried to get a job. They probably all had a bad interview. They probably had, you know, workplace communication issues. They've been fired. So my experience is that students, for the most part, not always, but many students like to talk about those things, especially when they have that experience. If I said, hey, I want everyone to tell me how to multiply fractions, you're not going to get this excitement and there might only be one person. But when I say, hey, who in here has had a bad interview? Most of the students are going to raise their hand. And then you can start talking about that. So again, why I love Work Essentials is that I think for your classrooms, it's easy to infuse, easy to have group activities, writing assignments, ways to start to broach the topic, talk about the topic, and then you can, whether it's for homework or as optional kind of next step, you can say, hey, there's this lesson in Essential Ed. Let's do a little bit of it together. I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm going to show you how to find it. And then if you want to do it at home, you can go and do that. So it's kind of a way to talk about it, introduce it. Maybe again, hey, this was in the news. Did you guys see that this thing happened? Did you hear about X, Y, and Z happening? And you can talk about it. You can maybe even show a news article, read it together, and then just slowly bring it over to this if you wanted to. And so again, using content maps, you have the ability to view all of the assessments that we have in the system, or you can click on this scope and sequence, so just the entire sequence of content based on those modules. So let's just go with job seeking. I'm going to hit see report. And when I do that, I see that entire list of lessons, kind of like the student did, but I can kind of just see it from, again, the teacher side. And so that networking lesson is here. If I want to see what that looks like, I could just pull it up and it's going to be that exact same window. Just the way the student saw it. So just like you're seeing it, if I was the instructor for today and you were one of my students and I wanted to talk about networking, maybe I introduce it, maybe I ask the audience in my class, hey, what do you guys know about this? No, I'm not talking about Facebook. It's not social network, blah, blah, blah. It could be, let's talk about that. But you could kind of draw it out. I would probably be writing their ideas on the board, getting a big kind of just brainstorm. And then we'd have a little bit of a discussion, or we might have a small reading. And then I could say, let's take a look at this together. And you could show the videos just like I'm doing to your entire class. You could stop the videos at specific times, say, hey, he just said this word. Do you know what that word means? So you could be super teacher directed and explicit, or again, you could be very hands off and just want your students to do it outside of class with minimal teacher involvement. But there's a lot of ways to kind of chop up the content, start it, stop it. You could go straight to the questions after you've done instruction. You could just show the videos and maybe you want them to go to do a writing. So you could use it in a lot of different ways. But again, this is the same content, it looks the same as a student would see it. And teachers have the ability to find all the content here, is what I was trying to say earlier. And then you can assign the content. So if you wanted to create that teacher directed list, as I was talking about, you could go in and you could assign those things to students so that they would have that list of content that they'd be able to do at any time. So rather than them having to go and find the things you want them to find or you hope they find, there would be that very specific teacher directed list in their homeroom. Any thoughts about previewing the content, looking at it, thinking about how to work it in? The other big question that's normally asked is, again, looking at this view, is that we don't really have a search functionality, at least explicitly on the page. So again, if you're thinking as an instructor, hey, I'd really like to talk about this, or I want to do this, or I want to show this, and you're like, wow, well, this is a lot of lessons. It's going to be hard to find where that is. You can do on your keyboard a Control F or Command F, and it should bring up some sort of search bar. I just did it, and you can hopefully see that search bar. And I want to type in, again, we're talking about job seeking. So I'm just going to type in the word resume, and you see I could find all the hits for resume and then take a look at those lessons to find out which one was the one I was hoping to cover or talk about. So Google Docs for resumes, Microsoft Word, if that's what I'm wanting to do, more of a technology or just more of a general kind of resume conversation. So you can use that search functionality. Since our site is a website like any other website, you can search websites with that Control or Command F as a way to find what you're looking for. Again, if you have a specific idea of what you're wanting to do. So I'm about to zoom back out of our platform and kind of go back to our presentation. I might kind of crowdsource some implementation ideas, things that you all do or things that have worked well. But before I leave, I'm curious if there are any other final questions or thoughts, either about the system, about the capabilities, about tracking progress. Those are things I didn't get into today, but all of the tracking and the study time and the reports, all those capabilities for educators are still the same. So you have the ability to do that and find that and see that like you've done with academic content, but okay, we're going to jump back out and we're going to slowly start to wrap up here. So it sounds like at least with a couple of the people that are here in the audience with me today, they we're talking a little bit about just infusing it into the academic content that's already happening in class. So in that scenario, like what are some approaches that you think can work in terms of starting to bring more of these work skills, work ready, soft skills into the classroom? Again, if you don't have a set aside 3 hours a week, 6 hours a week of a specific work ready class, that we could have that conversation as well, but how do you make it work when, again, as we talked about at the very beginning, there's already so much that teachers are juggling to kind of bring into the classroom? So for me, as you can see on the screen, these are some of the things that I've kind of mentioned them along the way. I want you to kind of be thinking about, again, giving me an idea that either you've seen work, you know works, or you think you'd like to try out that could work. I think with all this, I'm thinking back again to my time in the classroom, just being consistent and communicating right that. It's like, hey, every Friday morning, we're gonna spend the first 30 minutes doing this. I'm gonna bring a topic in, and here's the list of topics, and this is what we're gonna be working through. I used to teach a class that was Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to noon. And so, hey, this is gonna be that time. And if this is not what you need, you're welcome to, come into the back of the class and work on your academic content or just show up a little bit later. But I think just communicating what those expectations are and having students understand why you're doing it, right? Because sometimes I don't know how many times I heard, well, I don't want to study this because I'm trying to get my diploma, right? This is a waste of my time because they think it's not. So again, I think sometimes we have to sell that to them. It's like, well, that's great, but like, what happens when you get your diploma and then you're going to go and talk to that employer and they see you're maybe a little rough around the edges, or you need to practice your interviewing skills, or you need to understand, or maybe you've tried to apply jobs and it's not working. You need to go and learn how to network. It'd be something like that. And so I think thinking of how do we communicate that, how do we provide that consistency with that dedicated time, that would be my personal opinion on how to do it. And if you're trying to teach lots of other things, and again, I've already mentioned that idea of that whole group discussion. It's like starting there, like, hey, what do you all know about this? Has anyone had this experience? Maybe they could write on the board, hey, tell me about a time when an interview didn't go well. You can have them practice a little bit of writing, talk with each other, build some commonality, build some group ethos, and then say, hey, let's all talk about that. A couple people share. So there's ways to kind of do it. And like I said, I think a lot of the topics we have in Work Essentials students want to talk about. And that's a way for them to bring in their expertise, for lack of a better word, right? Because it's like they've either learned by succeeding or they've learned by not succeeding, and but they have some expertise on, oh, don't do this. Don't, I wore this and they got really mad at me, or I said this to my boss and I was fired immediately. So they have some stories, and they want to share those many times. And so I think it's an easier way for them to bring in some of their life experience and successes, and some of their things that didn't go well. And a lot of times they own that, sometimes not. But I think from a lot of the students I worked with, they were happy to share some of the things that didn't always work so well. And then, yeah, you could initiate that topic. You could assign the rest for homework. So there's different ways to do it. It could be very explicit. We're all doing this together. It can be in a lab setting where you're at the front and just saying, hey, everybody, we're going to work through these 2 lessons today, and you allow them all to work independently. But AJ and I, we wrote, and we're thinking about like a teacher guide for this course. And what I kept coming back to, and as I keep saying, is how do you start and end together? If students are working independently, even if they're working outside of class, how do you bring them all together? Again, if you're expecting them all to do it, at least to have like some touch points, so like some bookends of, hey, let's talk about this initially, or let's talk about this at the end of the week, so we can all at least finish this together, kind of close this section together. What were your learnings? Did any of this, from what you all saw in these lessons, have you all seen this in your life? Any experiences of networking or this or that? Let's talk about that. I think it's just a great way, again, to build a little bit of that group, that camaraderie, and some of those things that I think sometimes our classes need. Not always, and some teachers do that really well in other ways, but this is one way I think that it can be done. Other things, like I said, we've already talked a little bit about adjusting the writing prompts. If you have the ability to do that, or your teachers are doing writing assignments, having them write little blurbs or paragraphs or essays, why not use some of this as an entry point for that? Again, it depends on if you have very specific goals and objectives with your writing, or if it's more of a, hey, like a lot of times I would do as students were coming in for the first 20 or 30 minutes, I would normally have some sort of writing prompt on the board. Sometimes it was just kind of random what I would choose. It's like, well, rather than it being random, at least in my personal experience, you all are probably a lot more structured than I was. But the idea would be, why couldn't you use some of these writing prompts or some of these topics that overlap with Work Essentials as an entry point? I think the biggest thing would probably be starting with student goals, as we kind of talked about at the very beginning, how the course is very flexible, and thinking through where are my students at, where are they wanting to go, and then showing them, hey, you only need to do this piece, or I'm going to give you just this aspect. I'm going to turn all the other pieces off. I can do that in Essential Education, and really focus what you do. And over this semester, this this trimester, whatever this looks like, I want you to, when you have free time, work on these specific lessons. And that's kind of what that idea of rethink what completion means. It doesn't have to be the whole course. It doesn't have to be the whole module. It can just be bits and pieces depending on, again, what students need, what you need, what their goals are. If you can bring in real world examples, obviously that's always really helpful when it comes to work ready type of things. We've already talked a little bit about practicing with resumes and potentially a little bit in class, having them practice some of those things in cover letters. Has anyone ever done any mock interviews in their program or in their classes? Brought in industry people? AJ and I, my colleague here in the room, we both used to work for a career and technical education agency, it's state agency. So we would interact with a lot of the technical and vocational schools in Oklahoma. And that was one of the big things they would do with a lot of their career ready services, is they would go to all of the classes and the different programs. Hey, we're going to connect with the welders this week, and we're going to connect with the biz students this week, and they would kind of run them through mock interviews. And so it was always really cool to see that model of kind of prepping students in that very practical way. So again, that's not necessarily connected to work essentials, but again, it could be a next step after you're talking about it, they're thinking about it, they're writing about it, they're researching about it, they're studying it, and then could even take it to that next step of actually doing that, so they get some reps, how to talk about their skills, as AJ was saying. All right, what about you all? Anything that you've done that you think works well? Anything you're thinking about that could work well? I'd love to hear an idea or two, anything that you're like, I don't know if that's gonna work for me, Charlie.
Well, we do with an ITEC plan, which is just a case management document
Like it.
for a 5-10 year plan. On the front side, on the back side of the document, we have the plan for the GED. So what tests do they want to take first? What next? And the beauty of Essential Ed is, of course, right away we can offer the other subjects, because I'm only one teacher.
Yes.
So I only set up tutoring for one subject that they choose first. And then we don't go on to another subject until they've passed that test.
Gotcha.
But now I can incorporate the job curriculum and the workforce preparation right away.
Gotcha.
All I do is I put them in Essential Ed once they finish our onboarding. And I just upload the 4 subjects, the first 2 lessons of the first 4 subjects. But now I can put in the job preparation material.
Yeah.
And at least it's there for them to remind them that it's on the table.
Yeah.
They aren't doing this just for the academic part. It's a 5-10 year plan.
I like that. Yeah. So just for those attending virtually, we had an attendee here in person talking about just the very explicit 5 to 10 year plan that his program uses. Academic kind of side on the way I was envisioning, kind of goal setting on one side was academic, and really laying out what that looks like over the course of years and giving them the next steps. And on the back side, it was more of a life and work. And what does that look like? What are those goals? How do we kind of move towards those things? And you saying that, it really made me think, and again, you all can agree with me, or you can just put your thumbs down and say, no, I don't think this is true. But I really, thinking of like, okay, there's this very one specific academic goal or subject my students are working on, but whether it's digital online content or even in class, like students want a little bit of I don't want to say brain break, like work essentials or this other stuff is simple, or it's just this like playground, but it's nice to have something else to kind of go to. Like I can only do fractions and math for so long before I need to just stop and like set that down for a little bit. So it's nice to have something to complement that and bounce off of that, say, hey, like that you've been studying super hard on that for the last 90 minutes. Let's take a break. Let's get a coffee, walk around the building, and then come back and let's spend a little bit of time on this and kind of give your mind something else to think about before we go back and do a little bit more of that, whether it's today or the next day or whatever. So that's one of the other things I like about it, is it's a little bit of a different thinking, a different way to continue to be learning and moving forward without, again, having to just, plod through fractions. I was a middle school and high school math teacher, so probably just have my students' experiences drilled into my head of their faces when I would try to teach those things. But yeah, that's good. Anybody else? Again, Vert, I'm looking at the comments, so if you have something and you're listening online, feel free to share what that is, and I'm happy to escalate that or share that with the room here and with everybody, but I don't know, what are your thoughts? Is there anything that you do, at least even before, like structured content of just, hey, here's some topics. I know with a lot of ESL curriculum, there's a lot of kind of work units and lessons, and so I don't know, like, what does that look like for you in the past, if you don't mind me asking?
So I pretty much create my own curriculum.
Yeah.
And each year is a little different.
Okay.
Based on who's in class.
Okay.
And then
What have you found that works? Yeah, or that you keep coming back to, if you don't mind me asking?
as far as,
Just like like topics or like approaches of, hey, like, hey, here's how I like to talk about this thing, or when I do this lesson or this activity or this project, students really connect with, I don't know, just something like that. Anything like that?
when I teach history and culture,
Uh-huh.
they really enjoy that.
Okay.
So, a lot of historic things kind of go with what's happening today,
Sure.
when that's not intentional.
Yes.
And so in cultural things, so I tend to teach workforce stuff and cultural stuff together. Because
Okay.
then it connects it.
Yeah.
In a stronger way for.
Yeah.
students.
Yeah,
Because they're very interested in making sure they're fitting in the culture.
for sure.
And so when I'm explaining, well, this is how you approach a business meeting, and this is
Yeah.
how they love it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of our attendees who has advanced ESL students was talking about kind of teaching history and culture, but then culture kind of leads into workplace connections and you know, just business practices and job seeking practices. All that stuff is tied together, and you're exactly right, because every country, probably the way they communicate it, the way they talk about it, the way they seek it out, the way that it comes to them, all of that is so different. And yeah, there probably are a lot of faux pas that happen when people don't know the culture. And it's like, I mean, if you've grown up in the United States your whole life, that still happens because each individual company almost has their own culture, right? You're like, oh, so I went to this company and I tried to ask this thing. But it's like, because that's what it's been like at all my other companies and jobs and industries. But at this company or at this industry, they don't do it like that. And then you get like, you know, you can get blacklisted, or you can be like, no, we don't do that. No, don't come back here. Don't say that. Don't, whatever it might be. So yeah, it's interesting how even if it's not even cross-cultural, how it still is very industry specific, business specific. Yeah, shaking hands, it could be any number of things. You're exactly right. Exactly right. Any other thoughts?
We can incorporate it when we have like career fairs.
Mhm.
You know, lead up to.
Yeah, so yeah,
So.
It's a great
something
idea.
that we can consider in.
yeah.
all of this, so.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And even like some of them, just thinking with some of the topics like making good first impression, networking. You know, it could be researching companies. You could do a lot of that, saying, hey, here are the reps that are gonna be here from these organizations. So you could, you know, look at a lot of that, and no, I like that a lot, yeah.
The end result. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily you just doing it.
Just to do it, but yeah. But I like,
But
yeah.
it's like.
But that's more of a very short term, yeah, thing that I think students could see and know and get excited about, and then actually go and practice it in the short term, which probably is a lot more of where our brains are at these days.
When we're teaching IETs too, at the end of that, often we have employers coming in to talk.
Yeah,
Or directly employing, so. they
Yeah.
have an IET.
exactly. Yeah, one of our attendees was talking about local career fairs or career fairs at their school, and then using the content to gear up towards that, to give students a little bit more structure and support to have those conversations. And then someone else is talking about IETs and some of the employers that come in to talk with students during those times. Stuff. Well, that's what I have today. We talked briefly, kind of crowdsourced what you all think Work Ready is and some of the skills there. We talked a little bit about digital literacy, soft skills, and problem solving. We debated personal finance, if that should be included, and communication, some of those things. And then we talked about essentially just 3 different workforce readiness courses. The computer and money essentials are the 2 ones we didn't talk about, since that's, at least for today, not what we're doing, but we mainly talked about work essentials. We gave a nice big overview of what Work Essentials is, the student side of things, how they can access any piece of content anytime. They can be very self-directed, teacher-directed, or our system-directed prescribed plan. So there's a lot of ways it can look, which is nice. They can do it all. They can do bits and pieces. They can take little chunks of what's needed based on their goals. And the last 10 or 15 minutes, we've been talking about some implementation strategies and ways you could use Essential Ed and what specifically Work Essentials, or just generally speaking, ways to kind of incorporate this type of content in general. So yeah. So next steps and support, we have catalogs in the back. If you're here at COABE, virtually, visit our virtual booth. If you're here in person, visit our in-person booth. We'd love to talk more about it. We have a big screen at our booth and we could do a demo or talk more about it. But we definitely want to keep having conversations with you. And I would say more than anything, yeah, I want you to buy our products, but I think our students probably want and need more of this conversation, even if it's just little bits and pieces. Like I said, I think they connect with this and relate to this because most of our students are over the age of 16. Most of them probably over the age of 21 and have had some sort of work experience. And I think it's a way to validate that experience, validate that life, that lesson that they've had, and bring it into the classroom. So I think that gives them confidence that probably, again, I need to do some research, but probably then has a knock-on effect in other areas of their learning. If they're feeling more confident, feeling more comfortable, feeling more connected with the class and with the group, please tell me that that's not going to have some other effect in some other way, things that they're thinking about learning. Yes.
Is it set up like the academic side where they have seats and you can kind of put people in and
Yep,
out?
the same reusable seat model. Yeah, one of the attendees is asking kind of how the seats work. So yeah.
Great.
Yep. Reusable seat model. If you have cohorts, you said, hey, I want to take these 15 students through in the first 2 months of the semester, and then they've learned what I needed them to learn, and now come and take the next 15 students through. Yep, exactly like that.
Because we have 15 seats. And most of the time, I've definitely got 13 and 14 filled. Of course, most of the time 15, but maybe it won't even be an issue. Or I'm sure it won't if I have this other option
Yeah.
available, this job preparation part,
Mm-hmm.
and they know, hey, I can at least go in there if I don't want to study something academic, I can go in and prepare,
Yeah.
right, prepare for my future.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Just talking about just using the different subjects. And if it's not a bundle and those seats are separate, I mean, again, you could have students, academic students studying academic, and you could have a different group of students doing the Work Essentials, or it could be bundled where one seat and they could have access to all the stuff. So there's different ways it can look.
That's what I would prefer.
Yeah.
So they all have, right.
Yeah, so there's different ways, but if it's separated, obviously, then you'd have 30 unique students as opposed to just the 15, but when it's, yeah. So anyways, if you're curious about that, you want to know all the nuts and bolts, come by our booth. You can definitely visit our website and request a demo, request a quote. But like I said, I'm passionate about this because this is probably one of the things I enjoyed. I started as an adult ESL instructor, and talking about these things, as our colleague here in the room was talking about. I love talking about this stuff with my students and hearing their experiences and kind of giving them advice, and obviously working through these units and stuff in the content that we were using at the time. And so that's probably why I still enjoy thinking about it and talking about it. And like I said, I know our students want and need it. So thank you for coming virtually. Thank you all for coming in person, and I will end on that note. So appreciate it.
Charlie.